we had I would do my seminars, and then someone in the questions and answer time would say, um, it's all good to do physical preparation, but what about spiritual preparation? If you don't have spiritual preparation, you're no better off than a doomsday prepper. So this is the purpose of this topic, is the spiritual side. People would say, well, if the grid goes down and you can't buy or sell, we won't be able to get to your videos. You need to write a book so we can put it on the shelf. So I did. And that was a year ago. And then that was called Sustainable Country Living. And then, welcome, come on in. And then last year, somebody said, well, that's fine, but what about spiritual? So I wrote the book Spiritual Preparation, from which this seminar is built on. So that's this book here. Okay, so anyway, let's dive in. And this is the topic, spiritual preparation for the time of trouble. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a balanced look at spiritual lessons and practical ways to prepare for the time of trouble and Jesus' return, how to trust God through troublous times, and the characteristics of those who were faithful. So each day we're going to look at another Bible story having to do with people that were faithful during troublous times and what we can glean for the approaching time of trouble as well. So we have 4 days. The morning and afternoon are the same. And so if you have some conflict in schedule, you can catch the other one. Part 1 is today, warnings and surprises. We're going to look at what it means as it was in the days of Noah. And we're going to look at the close of probation, the comparison, the parable of the thief in the night, and the 3 stages of the time of trouble. If you go to my website and look at the first video of my first seminar, which was at Phoenix Central Church 10 years ago, it was called Lessons from the 2 Times of Trouble. I've since learned there are 3 times of trouble, which you probably didn't know, so you'll find that interesting. Okay, part 2, tomorrow, Awake Sleeping Saints, 10 Virgins, Laodicea, and the Watchman on the Wall. Part 3 of the seminar is Settling into the Truth, Elijah in the Wilderness, the third angel, the loud cry, and when will these things be? And part 4 is Being Faithful unto the End, the faithful Hebrews, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, trusting as God as a child, and the 8 stages of the Sunday Law. You might have heard of 4, but I have identified 8. So you may find that interesting. So this is the book, Spiritual Preparation for the Time of Trouble. And what I did is that I took 4 topics from different chapters in the book, and I'm going to have a multimedia presentation about those subjects. So the first one we're going to look at is As It Was in the Days of Noah. That dovetails with chapter 6 in the book. Chapter 7 is the close of probation. Chapter 16 is the thief in the night. And the addendum in the back of the book is the 3 stages of the time of trouble. This is a time chart. If you were in one of my previous classes on country living, that we use this chart as well. And I have a handout with it on it. So you don't need to necessarily take a picture of it at this point. But these are the 3 times of trouble. And we'll go into detail a little bit later. But there's the little time of trouble. We're right now in the call to leave the city stage. Little time of trouble hasn't started yet. I believe it starts with the Sunday Law. We'll talk about that. Then it goes until the close of probation. Then what's something that I've learned more recently is there are actually 2 stages after the time of trouble, or after the close of probation, and we'll go into great detail about it. The great time of trouble and Jacob's time of trouble. And so we'll look into that, and you'll have a handout on that material. Last Day Events says those who are loyal to God will see every earthly support cut off. So what would you do if you couldn't buy or sell and every earthly support was cut off? That has been the focus of my seminars over the last 10 years with Sustainable Country Living. But again, if that's what only thing you're doing, and you're not getting the spiritual peace, then you're no better off than the world. So we're focusing on the spiritual today. The close of probation, when the work of the investigative judgment closes, the destiny will have been decided for life or death, last day events. And 2 Corinthians 6, behold, now is the accepted time. Now, behold, now is the day of salvation, which is basically the theme of our camp meeting. So let's take a look at this first section, as it was in the days of Noah. There's some really interesting things here when you dig deep into it, and I've mixed a lot of video clips to kind of make it more interesting. So, as it was in the days of Noah. Matthew 24 says, but as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage. They knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall the coming of Jesus be. So what we learn from this Bible verse is that in Noah's day, the world carried on as normal until the floodwaters came. And I didn't notice until I studied this more that there actually was a time period from when the door closed until the flood came. It didn't happen at the same time. And we'll go into that. The story of Noah and the ark.
The world was filled with wickedness. God saw the corruption of the earth and decided to cleanse it with a great flood. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. Make yourself an ark of cypress wood. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark, and make lower, middle, and upper decks. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. Then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth. And Noah and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood.
So what we learn from this is Noah was a righteous man. He did as God asked, and because of his faithfulness, his family was saved. I wonder how much of his family were as convinced as he was. Obviously, they could have said, no, we're not getting in. And I wonder if Noah had more kids than just the boys. And they may have worked on the boat and decided not to get on. But the ones we know about got on. And then let's back up. Methuselah was a descendant of Seth. So he was the righteous living son. And he lived 969 years. Methuselah and his sons, who lived to hear the preaching of Noah, assisted in the building of the ark, according to patriarchs and prophets. So here's Methuselah and his sons. They helped build the ark. His name meant, when he is dead, it will be sent. So in other words, when I die, the flood will come. He died the year of the flood. Second book of spiritual gifts says, Enoch instructed his family in regard to the flood. Methuselah, the son of Enoch, listened to the preaching of his grandson Noah, who faithfully warned the inhabitants of the old world that a flood of waters was coming upon the earth. Methuselah and his sons and grandsons lived in the time of the building of the ark. They, with some others, received instruction from Noah and assisted him in building the ark. So we've got multiple generations working on the boat. Of course, how long did it take to build the boat? 120 years. Why were so many of Noah's relatives not on the ark? Any ideas? They probably passed away, is my guess. Because if they were faithful enough to help build the ark, they probably would have got on. So this is showing God confronting Noah and telling him the flood's going to happen.
One day, Jehovah God came to Noah.
Noah. Noah.
Oh, my Lord.
The end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And, behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make you an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shall you make in the ark, and shall pitch it.
So God gave Noah specific instructions, and Noah faithfully followed the instructions.
So Noah began to build the ark, day by day, month by month, year by year. Noah trusted in God. He continued faithfully without stopping, no matter what people said about him and his boat. Approximately 100 years passed after Noah had finished the boat, and all the hard work had paid off. God told Noah, "You and your family are to get on the boat and all the animals. It will rain for 40 days and 40 nights." And Noah did as God told him to.
Noah faithfully preached for 120 years, warning the people. He faithfully constructed the ark for 120 years. Can you imagine building that thing for 120 years with people laughing at you and having never seen an ocean? John here is a builder. He's built lots of buildings and houses and classic cars. And I can't imagine taking on this big of a project and just sticking through it. It's amazing when you think about it. He did both even when people did not believe and ridiculed him and his project. First volume of Spirit of Prophecy says, angels were sent to collect from the forest and fields the beasts which God had created. Angels went before these beasts, and they followed, 2 by 2, male and female, and clean beasts by sevens. These beasts, from the most ferocious down to the most gentle and harmless, peacefully and solemnly marched into the ark. Do you think the angels were visible by the people? I think probably not, but it was a miracle nonetheless to see all these animals. How long did it take for the animals to get in the ark? Anybody know? It was 7 days. We'll get to that. Does the timing have prophetic implications? Book 1, Spirit of Prophecy. The world looked on in wonder, on with wonder, some with fear, but they had become so hardened by rebellion that this most signal manifestation of God's power had but a momentary influence on them. For 7 days, these animals were coming into the ark, and Noah was arranging them in their places prepared for them. 7 days. That's a lot of animals. Is it possible that during the loud cry, everybody know what the loud cry is? It's when the Holy Spirit is poured out, like Pentecost, and the gospel gets spread. And Joel 2 says, my spirit will be poured out on all flesh. So if the Holy Spirit is poured out on all people, not just Adventists, not just Christians, but all people, they would understand, because it's the last chance. And by the way, if you have someone that you've tried to witness to and you felt like it was going on deaf ears, when the loud cry happens, there's going to be an awakening, and they're going to understand completely. Matter of fact, Ellen White even says that we're going to glow in the dark when that time comes, just like Moses when he came off the mountain. So imagine your neighbor. You've been trying to witness to them. They're really not interested. And now the loud cry happens. Not only are you consumed with the Holy Spirit, but so are they. They'll either shut it out or get the picture. So you now go over to meet your neighbor and you glow in the dark. And their minds are completely wide open to spiritual things for the first time. And they will either accept it or not. This is when you're going to have 1,000 in a day being converted, right? So that's the loud cry. Is it possible, when we're thinking of Noah and the ark and how it took 7 days for the animals to go in before the door shut, is it possible that during the loud cry, there will be 7 intense, miraculous days similar to the animals going into the ark for 7 days during God's last effort to reach any savable remaining persons? I think it's possible. We don't know. I've scoured the Bible and Spirit of Prophecy, haven't found any proof, but clearly there were 7 days of the animals getting in the ark. And we know that the closing of the door of the ark is symbolic of the close of probation. So during the final push before the close of probation, it's possible that God will pull out all the stops. The loud cry will open everybody's minds and empower people who are not eloquent and not real good Bible students to be able to convert people. And I'm wondering if that's 7 days in Noah's days, as it was in the days in the end. Is it possible we're going to see a 7-day push just before the close of probation and it's too late? So why did God not allow Noah to close the door?
When God decided to shut the door by himself, he must have had important reasons for doing so. While the exact reasons are not clearly stated in the Bible, we can explore some likely possibilities that offer insight into God's purpose in this significant moment. Why did God not allow Noah to close the door of the ark? Divine authority and sovereignty first, let's think about what it means that God closed the door of the ark. In Genesis 7:16, it says, "And they that went in male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in." This part of the story shows that God was in charge of everything happening. The ark was not just a boat, it was a refuge created by God. God decided to shut the door by himself in his own divine wisdom. Noah had no say or power whatsoever. By doing this, God emphasizes that salvation is responsibility. Noah worked hard to build the ark, but it was God who decided who would be saved. This reminds us today that while we can plan and prepare, ultimately it is God who holds the power to save us. Why did God not allow Noah to close the door of the ark? A testament to faith. Imagine how Noah felt as he watched everything happen outside the ark. The people around him were living their lives as if nothing was wrong, even while Noah worked diligently to prepare for the flood. By not being able to shut the door himself, Noah had to rely entirely on God for his safety and the safety of his family. This situation teaches us an important lesson about faith. We often face challenges that seem impossible, and it can be hard to trust God completely. However, Noah's story shows that real faith means depending on God, especially when we feel powerless. Why did God not allow Noah to close the door of the ark? Symbolism of grace. God shutting the door is also a powerful symbol of grace. The ark represents God's mercy. Genesis 6:8 says, "But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord." This means that Noah and his family were chosen not because of their own goodness, but because of God's love and grace. When God closed the door, it showed that salvation is a gift. Just as Noah could not close the door, we cannot earn our way into heaven. Instead, we must accept God's offer of grace through faith in Jesus. Why did God not allow Noah to close the door of the ark? A spiritual barrier. The act of closing the door also represents a clear separation between those who are saved and those who are lost. Once God shut the door, there was no turning back. The people outside faced the consequences of their choices. This moment reminds us of the urgency of accepting God's grace. Just as Noah had a limited time to prepare, we too have a chance to respond to God's call. 2 Corinthians 6 verse 2 reminds us, for he says, "In an acceptable time I have heard you, and in the day of salvation I have helped you." It's important to recognize that the time to accept God's gift of salvation is now. God decided to shut the door by himself in his own divine wisdom. Noah had no say or power whatsoever. This shows that real leadership in God's eyes requires us to trust him fully and allow him to guide our steps, even when the outcome is beyond our control. This moment also emphasizes that as leaders, we should not take credit for what God does. Noah could have easily thought he was the one in control because of all his hard work. However, the closing of the door was a powerful reminder that God's plan is what truly matters. By stepping back and allowing God to take charge, Noah set an example for us. It teaches us to trust God's wisdom and timing in our lives. God shutting the door serves as a sign of Jesus as the ultimate door to salvation. Just as the ark provided safety during the flood, Jesus offers us a way to escape spiritual death. In Matthew 7:13-14, Jesus says, "Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate, and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it." This shows that the door to salvation is still open for those who choose to enter through Christ.
So here we see that only God was in charge. Real faith means depending on God. Salvation is a gift. There's urgency to accept God's offer of salvation and trust God's wisdom and timing. You'll notice our camp meeting theme is "Now is the time" to do that. So we see a parallel between the closing of the door and the close of probation.
After Noah and his family and the animals were safe inside, God shut the door. For 7 days, nothing happened. You'd imagine the people outside continued on as spectators, and you can imagine them laughing and joking about the crazy old man inside with his zoo. By now, Noah was 600 years old. But can you imagine how the expressions on their faces changed from mirth to fear when dark clouds hid the sun on the 8th day? They weren't laughing anymore when thunder rumbled and lightning cracked and flashed across the sky. Then rain began to fall, slowly at first, you'd think, and then faster and faster. It says that the fountains of the great deep were broken up and the windows of heaven were opened. Torrents of water hit the earth with immense force. I don't suppose anyone laughed as animals began running to higher ground, crying out in terror as they went. No, instead of laughing, the people would have run to the ark and banged on the door. But it was too late. Probation had ended for them.
Have any of you been to the Ark Encounter? Yeah, I'll bet you have. You're not too far away. Pretty amazing. It's pretty big, isn't it? The door closing on the ark is a foreshadowing of the close of probation at the end of time. As it was in the days of Noah, the time of trouble as never was.
Then the rain came mightily, and water erupted from underneath the ground. The water covered the highest mountains. The whole earth was covered with water. Great storms and thunders and lightning filled the earth. Even though it was really scary, Noah still believed that God was with him.
Like the flood coming, the final time of trouble will be a surprise to the wicked. By then, everyone's destiny will be final. And just like she described there, it'll be scary to be in the Jacob's time of trouble, but God will protect us. There's even the description that when the death decree is enacted at midnight, we're going to enforce it, and everybody fled to the mountains, and they allowed an early execution ahead of schedule. So there was these mobs going after the saints, and the angels surrounded them so that they couldn't get to them. It's pretty cool to think about how God will protect. This is first selected messages. There was a shut door in Noah's day. This was at a time of withdrawal of the Spirit of God from the sinful race that perished in the waters of the flood. God himself gave the shut door message to Noah. My spirit shall not always strive with men, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. And then it continues, there was a shut door in Abraham's day. Mercy ceased to plead with the inhabitants of Sodom, and all but Lot and his wife and his 2 daughters were consumed by fire sent down from heaven. Then there was a shut door in 1844. There was a shut door in 1844. All who saw the light of the first and second angels' messages rejected that light were left in darkness. And those who accepted it and received the Holy Spirit, which attended the proclamation of the message from heaven, and who afterward renounced their faith and pronounced their experience a delusion, therefore rejected the Spirit of God, and it no longer pleaded with them. Patriarchs and prophets. For 7 days after Noah and his family entered the ark, there appeared no sign of the coming storm. During this period, their faith was tested. It was a time of triumph to the world outside. The apparent delay confirmed them in belief that Noah's message was a delusion and that the flood would never come. Notwithstanding the solemn scenes that they had witnessed, the beasts and birds entering the ark, the angel of God closing the door, they still continued their sport and revelry, even making a jest of those signal manifestations of God's power. They gathered in crowds about the ark, deriding its inmates with a daring violence that had never been ventured upon before. So here's what we have learned, is that there was a 7-day period during which the animals went into the ark. Then the door was closed. Then there was another 7-day period before the rain came. So during that 7 days, nothing happened. There was no rain. Noah and his family are in there with the animals and nothing's happening. That verse said that it was a trying time because they're probably wondering, is this really not going to happen? And then on the 8th day it happened. So my question is it possible that there's a significance to this 7 days before the door closing? If we apply it to the end, with the door closing being the close of probation, is there going to be a 7-day period with these miraculous things happening as God tries to reach the final push? And then what about after the close of probation? Is there going to be a 7-day period where it seems like nothing's happening? So we're going to look into that. Is it possible there will be 7 days before and after the close of probation that are significant? Third book, Spiritual Gifts. Notwithstanding the solemn exhibition that they had witnessed of God's power, of unnatural occurrence of the beasts leaving the forests and fields and going into the ark, the angel of God clothed with brightness and terrible in majesty. So they didn't probably see the angels bringing the animals in, but did they see the angel close the door? If you look at that carefully, they saw the angel closing the door. So the angel of God, clothed with brightness and terrible in majesty, descending from heaven and closing the door. Yet they hardened their hearts and continued to revel in sport over the signal manifestations of divine power. So even after they saw the miracles of the animals, even they saw the angel come and close the door, they still were making fun of Noah when he was in the ark. I find that interesting. The wicked witnessed God's miraculous power, animals entering the ark, and the bright angel closing the door. Is it possible that the wicked will revel and sport after the close of probation? So if the closing of the door is symbolic of the close of probation, is it possible that there will be a 7-day lull before the plagues start, during which time they will continue to do business and marrying and giving in marriage and all those things that the Bible talks about? An open door for the believing. There was a shut door in Noah's day. There was a shut door for unbelievers in Sodom, but an open door to Lot. There was a shut door to the inhabitants of Tyrus, a shut door to the inhabitants of Jerusalem who disbelieved, but an open door to the humble, the believing, those who obeyed God. Thus it will be at the end. So there will be, before the door closes and the close of probation, there will be an opportunity for the faithful to make that final decision. We have a dear friend. We've known her for a long time, and Patty's known her a long time. And I saw her here early at camp meeting. She's next to us. And her younger son is wandered away from the church for a long time. Maybe never. When he was really young, he wanted to be baptized, and they felt he was too young, and then he never wanted to get baptized. So maybe he didn't wander away. He's never become an Adventist. He's never given his heart to the Lord that we know of. And she is now almost 90, and her heart is bleeding. And I told her, I said, did you know there's a Spirit of Prophecy statement to give you hope? 6th volume of the testimony. When the storm of persecution really breaks upon us, the true sheep will hear the true shepherd's voice. Self-denying efforts will be put forth to save the lost, and many who have strayed from the fold will come back. Don't ever quit praying. I heard of one story of some dear mother was praying for her wandering son, and he never came back. And she died, and then he came back. So, heaven's going to be great. So now let's look at the close of probation more closely. Great controversy. When the work of the investigative judgment closes, that's the close of probation, right? The destiny of all will have been decided for life or death. Probation is ended a short time before the appearing of the Lord in the clouds in heaven. So my question is, will the wicked know when probation closes? I'm seeing a shaking no. Anybody want to weigh in? Will the righteous know when probation closes? That's maybe even a harder one. I found an answer to one of them, or both of them actually. The righteous and the wicked will still be living on the earth in their mortal state. Men will be planting and building and eating and drinking, all unconscious that the final irrevocable decision has been pronounced. So when the close of probation happens, and it's too late to change your mind, no one's going to know it. The wicked or the righteous. Life will go on as usual. Is it possible it's that 7 days after the closing of the door? Just a thought. Before the flood, after Noah entered the ark, God shut him in and shut the ungodly out. But for 7 days, the people, knowing not that their doom was fixed, continued their careless, pleasure-loving life and mocking the warnings of impending judgment. So, says the Savior, shall the coming of the Son of Man be. I think there's a really good chance there's going to be a 7-day lull after the close of probation before the plagues start, based on this. Close of probation will happen without the wicked knowing it and without the righteous knowing it. So the question is, will Satan know it? The shut door of the close of purgation. Noah was shut in, and the rejectors of God's mercy were shut out. The seal of heaven was on the door. God had shut it, and God alone could open it. So when Christ shall cease his intercession for the guilty men, what time period is that? Close of probation, right? That's when he ceases his intercession. So at the close of probation, before his second coming in the clouds of heaven, the door of mercy will be shut. Then divine grace will no longer restrain the wicked, and Satan will have full control over those who have rejected mercy. Have any of you ever seen a demon-possessed person? It is very scary. I have reason to believe from the spirit of prophecy that once this happens and probation has closed and Satan has complete control. By the way, the only reason we don't have what happened in downtown Los Angeles everywhere is because the angels are holding back the wind of strife. But when this happens and probation is closed, they're going to let go. And Satan will have complete control over the wicked. That means every human being that's not saved will be demon-possessed. That's really scary. Then divine grace will no longer restrain the wicked. Satan will have full control over those who have rejected him. There's demon possession. They will endeavor to destroy God's people, but as Noah was shut in the ark, so the righteous will be shielded by divine power. What a promise, patriarchs and prophets. So is it possible that the devil and his angels will not even know that probation has closed? Noah was shut in. So when Christ ceases his intercession before the coming of the clouds in heaven, the door of mercy will be shut. Satan will have complete control. It doesn't say Satan's going to know, but he might know because he all of a sudden has complete control. But the wicked and the righteous won't know. Is it possible there'll be 7 days from the close of probation to the plague starting to fall? I think that's a possibility. Close of probation compared to the thief in the night. Silently, unnoticed as a midnight thief will come the decisive hour. So let's take a look at the thief in the night. As the thief in the night, believers are not caught off guard.
Jesus warned that his second coming would be unexpected, like a thief in the night. But this applies not to the faithful followers, but to those who are spiritually unprepared. In 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 4 through 6, it is emphasized that believers are not in darkness, and that day will not overtake them as a thief. They are children of light and of the day, not of the night or darkness. Thus, believers should remain vigilant and sober, not spiritually asleep like others. For those who are diligent in studying scriptures and observing the signs, the day of Christ's return will not come as a surprise. However, for those living in spiritual darkness, the unrepentant sinners who are not watchful, it will indeed come unexpectedly, like a thief in the night.
So Jesus' second coming will be a surprise to the wicked, but the believers will not be taken by surprise. We need to be watchful.
Jesus will come back like a thief in the night. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. People today are overwhelmingly unprepared for the second coming of Jesus Christ. We know that day will be the final day for mankind, where we will all stand before the judgment seat of Christ to answer for our deeds done on earth. This will be a day that those who are saved will know their names were written in the book of life, enabling them to have eternal life and the peace of heaven forevermore. However, the unbelievers and the rebellious will be cast into the lake of fire. Although many throughout the centuries have tried to predict this great day, they have all failed miserably. God designed for us to not know this information so that we can spiritually prepare ourselves for this moment each day. Are you prepared?
Most are not prepared for Jesus' return. While we do not know the day or the hour, we should know the season.
How we should live while we wait for Christ's return. Luke 21 verse 34 to 36. And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting, and drunkenness, and cares of this life, and so that day come upon you unawares. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. The return of the Lord is not supposed to catch the believers unaware. Christ has already given us all the indications of his return, and he has also told us all the measures we need to put in place to ensure that we are fully prepared for his coming. We are supposed to be ready for his coming. What if he doesn't come in my lifetime? Does it really matter? Whether he comes here or whether you go to him, it doesn't matter. We are to be always ready. The day our life here on earth will end is unknown to us all, and the day of his coming is unknown to anyone. That means you and I should always be ready. The uncertainty of the very day of Christ's return is the reason we must all live our lives in a way that will qualify us to reign with him when he shall suddenly appear. Matthew 24 verse 36. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Christ warns us not to be overly conscious of the cares and pleasures of life, so that his coming will not meet us unprepared. Therefore, believers are to live every day of their lives as if Christ will return the following hour. There are many who are beginning to lose the hope of the coming of Christ because of its delay. Throwing cautions to the wind is quite dangerous at this time, because all the indicators of the imminence of Christ's return are being manifested in our very eyes. We must always be on guard, because Christ will come as a thief in the night, who gives no notice to his victims. Matthew 24 verse 27. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Christ told us how we should live in preparation for his return. He instructed us to always watch and pray. Christ knows that if we watch and pray, we will not fall into temptation. He knows that if we are on our watch, his coming will not come upon us unaware. To watch means to be eager, earnestly waiting for his return. To watch also means to be on guard and to be careful. Our eagerness for the return of the Lord will produce a great passion in our hearts, which will cause us to stand firm in the hope of his arrival. We are to watch for the return of the Lord as one who earnestly yearns and waits for the return of a loved one from a journey. We keep watch for the coming of the Lord when we guard our conducts and refuse to be lured into evil practices of the world. The world is charming. It promises momentary pleasures. However, believers must learn to subdue their appetites for the pleasures of this world in order to lay hold on eternity. While the people of the world will be pursuing wealth, fame and power at all cost, Christ would return to their utter dismay, leaving them with no opportunity to amend their ways. Then, the blessedness of our watchfulness will be glaring to all. for the reward of our patience will be duly handed to us. Revelation 22 verse 12, And behold, I am coming quickly, and my reward is with me, to give to everyone according to his work. Matthew 24 verse 36 to 44 says, But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be.
We should watch and pray. Believers will not be caught unaware. We are to always be ready. Don't be so consumed with our daily tasks. Now, finally, we're going to look at these 3 times of trouble. What leads up to the second coming of Jesus? Lately, it's become obvious to me there are, in fact, 3 times of trouble. This is James White chart I made from the description you'll see in a minute. James White believed there were 3 times of trouble. His started in 1844, and he called it the lesser time of trouble, then the close of probation, then the greater time of trouble, and Jacob's time of trouble, with the plagues overlapping both of them until the voice of God at the second coming. Here's where I discovered this from. This is a Ellen White Letters and Manuscripts with Annotations, Volume 1, page 51. The time of trouble vision increased James White's interest in the progression of final events. By 1847, he had developed a 3-phase time of trouble beginning in 1844 and continuing until the voice of God at the second coming. The 3 phases were the lesser time of trouble, the greater time of trouble, and Jacob's time of trouble. The lesser time of trouble began in 1844 while Jesus continued his work as a high priest. The greater time of trouble, yet future, would begin when Jesus laid aside his priestly robes and probation closed. Then the 7 last plagues would be poured out. Jacob's time of trouble would occur just before the second coming. So, if we translate that into our modern vocabulary, then we've got the little time of trouble and the great time of trouble and Jacob's time of trouble. Basically the same thing as James White's chart, except I believe it starts at the Sunday Law and not 1844. And by the way, the Sunday Law, when this starts, that's when I describe this, the clock starts ticking. When we have a first national Sunday Law, not local, but national, it's not going to be, it's going to look really innocent. It may have to be to save the planet. It may be, let's just have a family day, let's close the stores and don't mow your lawn. It's not going to be religious. It's not going to be dangerous, but it'll be the moment where praying and thinking Adventists are going to go, hey, wait a minute, here, the clock just started ticking. And I personally, people have asked, well, how long would this little time of trouble be when you're supposed to be in the country and growing your own food and all that stuff? And I would say, well, we don't know for sure, but I have a hunch that Daniel 12 at the end is a clue. And if it's true, then the little time of trouble will be 3.5 years long from the Sunday Law. The great time of trouble will be, if I've got it right, a month. Maybe it's 45 days. And then Jacob's time of trouble would be a month, if that's the case. Anyway, so this is the little time of trouble. And the term little time of trouble is not in the Spirit of Prophecy, and it's not in the Bible. But it is the title of a chapter in Last Day Events. So the people who compiled the Ellen White quotes to make the book Last Day Events gave the title Little Time of Trouble. And we as Adventists use that term pretty prolifically, but I just want you to know that that isn't a term that's actually there. Just like there isn't the term millennium in the Bible, but we know there's a millennium, right? So here's Here's a statement. What happened is Ellen White talked about the commencement of that time of trouble in early writings. One of her very first things, she talks about the time of trouble. And there was some confusion about it because of these multiple layers of the time of trouble. And they thought it was talking about one time of trouble, and it really was the other. And so that happened in 1847. It's when she first wrote early writings. So in 1851, she personally clarified what she meant by the term time of trouble. And so she says, the commencement of that time of trouble, I think that is significant, here mentioned, the one that was published in early writings, does not refer to that time when the plagues are poured out, but a short time period before that, they're poured out while Christ is in the sanctuary. So that's the little time of trouble. She was talking about the little time of trouble, and people thought she was talking about the Jacob's time of trouble. At that time, while the work of salvation is closing, trouble will be coming upon the earth, and nations will be angry, yet held in check, so that not to prevent the work of the third angel. Note in the explanation, Ellen White used the term that time of trouble rather than the time of trouble. Also note, Ellen White says that the time of trouble is a short period before the plagues are poured out and the close of probation. So apparently she didn't describe to the idea of the little time of trouble starting in 1844 as James White surmised. So if you understand what all that says, she didn't say there weren't 3 times of trouble, but she didn't necessarily believe that it started in 1844, as James White's chart showed. So if our interpretation of it is correct, then the little time of trouble starts at the Sunday law rather than 1844. It's a little time of trouble when you're moving out of the cities and you're living in being self-sustaining, and you're not going to be able to buy or sell eventually. And there's the mark of the beast. That's the little time of trouble. Then probation closes. Then we've got the great time of trouble and Jacob's time of trouble with the plagues going in between. The question is, where is that line in between? And I didn't know. And a friend of mine and another friend, we were studying on the phone, actually, between the 3 of us, because we don't live right near each other, and we were trying to understand this. And one of the friends said, great controversy is the answer. It tells you in the great controversy. So, Last Day Events says, a great crisis awaits the people of God. Very soon our nation will attempt to enforce upon all the observance of the first day as a sacred day. There will come a time when, because of our advocacy of Bible truth, shall be treated as traitors. Those who honor the Bible Sabbath will be denounced as enemies of law and order. Can you imagine Seventh-day Adventists, people of the book, people who hold up God's law, being called traitors of law and order? That's going to happen. So now we're looking at the great time of trouble. Probation is closed, and so where is this line between these two? Why is there 2 times of trouble after the close of probation? Now, this is another chapter in the book Last Day Events, and this is the title for chapter 18, The 7 Last Plagues and the Righteous, the Great Time of Trouble, part 2. So here the editors of this Last Day Events book, compiling Ellen White's quotes about this, use the term great time of trouble. I saw that 4 angels were holding back the winds until Jesus' work is done in the sanctuary. Then will come the 7 last plagues. So we've got the close of probation, then the 7 last plagues. These plagues enraged the wicked against the righteous. They thought that we had brought the judgments of God upon them. And if they could rid the earth of these plagues, they would be stayed. In other words, they'd stop. So what happened is they did, the probation closed, the plagues started to fall, and they at first didn't notice that it wasn't affecting the righteous. Eventually they notice that the righteous aren't being affected by the plagues. And they say, you know what? It's their fault. If we get rid of them, the plagues are going to go away. You remember reading that? Okay. A decree went forth to slay the saints, which caused them to cry day and night for deliverance. This was the time of Jacob's trouble. This is the last of the 3 times of trouble. Then all the saints cried out in anguish of spirit and were delivered by the voice of God. So the death decree starts Jacob's time of trouble. The death decree in this case is not a decree, it's a decree with teeth. Because even when you're talking the little time of trouble, they're talking about, well, you can't buy or sell. And if you read Revelation, it talks like, put you to death. There were people going to go to jail and stuff like that. But at this time, this decree will actually have a deadline. This decree will say, not only is there this death decree hanging over your head, but it's going to hang on your head until Saturday night. And then all of you are going to get executed. You follow what I'm saying? That's the difference. This decree has teeth. All right, so the decree starts at the time of Jacob's time of trouble. The decree will finally be issued to put them to death. Not just threaten them with death, but put them to death at a particular time. So this is Jacob's time of trouble. So the question still remains, when is this death decree enacted? Because it's in the middle of the plagues. Remember, we just read that the plagues are starting to fall, and they finally realize that the wicked aren't being affected. If we get rid of them, these plagues will quit. That means the plagues had already started. You follow what I'm saying? So where is it in this sequence of 7 plagues? Great Controversy tells you. 627. When Christ ceases his intercession in the sanctuary, close of probation, unmingled wrath threatened against those who worship the beast in his image and receive his mark will be poured out. Okay? Close of probation, 7 last plagues. Can you see that? That's what it's saying. When the intercession in heaven is happens, that's close of probation, then they'll be poured out, 7 last plagues. So probation closes, 7 last plagues. Maybe there's that week we talked about. We don't know. But for sure, after probation closes, the plagues start. Now, watch this. The plagues upon Egypt when God was about to deliver Israel are similar in character to those more terrible and extensive judgments which are to fall upon the world just before the final deliverance of God's people. So the close of probation is followed by the plagues. When the protection of human laws shall be withdrawn from those who honor the law of God, there will be in different lands a simultaneous movement for their destruction. At the time appointed, so there's that timeline, there will be a decree draws near, the people will conspire to root out the hated sect. It will be determined to strike in one night a decisive blow and shall utterly silence the voice of dissent and reproof. So what it's saying is, they're going to see that the wicked are going to notice that the righteous aren't being affected by the plagues. If we get rid of them, we're going to get rid of the plagues. So now they put the teeth in because they say, we're going to make a specific time when this is going to happen. Okay? If they could rid the earth of us, the plagues will be stayed. A decree went forth to slay the saints. So now this death decree is not just a threat, it's got a deadline. Okay? So, says the Revelator, this is Great Controversy. This is the key. This is the one that tells us where this happens. Says the Revelator, in describing those terrific scourges, there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast. What plague is that? Anybody remember? That's the boils. That's number 1. That's plague number 1, okay? I'll back up. There fell noisome and grievous sores upon men which had the mark of the beast and upon them that worship the image. So there's plague number 1. The sea became blood of a dead man. What plague is that? 2. All the salt water turns to blood. By the way, at that point, they can still drink water because it's only the salt water that's got it. All right? And the rivers and fountains of water became blood. What plague is that? 3. Now they can't drink water. Now they're going to die because they can't get any water. Before it was just salt water. Before it was just sores. But now they can't even drink. How long can you go without a drink? Not very long. So now they're getting desperate. So they do this death decree. Now watch this. by condemning the people of God to death, they have, past tense, as truly incurred the guilt of the blood as if they'd shed it with their own hands. There's where the switch happens. We've got plague number 1, plague number 2, plague number 3, and then the death decree with teeth. And then it says, in the plague that follows, the power was given to scorch the sun. That's the 4th plague. And then the 5th plague, and then the 6th plague, and then the 2nd plague. So it seems very obvious to me that in great controversy, it becomes clear that this dividing line between the greater time of trouble and Jacob's time of trouble, which is when you flee to the mountains and your bread and water is sure, is after the 3rd plague. So here it is on the chart. See, we've got 1 to 3 plagues, great time of trouble. Jacob's time of trouble is 4 to 7. By the way, the 7th plague is Jesus coming. Okay, so to recap, now is the time to prepare by moving into the country. Now is the time to develop your gardening skills. By the way, how long does it take to learn how to do that? How long does it take to plant a fruit tree and get enough fruit to live off of? You can't just say, I'm going to wait till there's a Sunday law. Yeah, about 5 years, right? But you can't just say, I'm going to wait till there's a Sunday law, then I'm going to move out of my 10th floor apartment in downtown Seattle. It's too late. You're not going to know how to do these things. Now is the time to work on being able to sustain ourselves during the little time of trouble, because the problem of buying and selling will be a very serious one. Now is the time to draw closer to Jesus and allow him to perfect our characters before the close of probation. Why do we have to have our characters perfected ahead of time? I thought we were changed in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye. I have a friend that believes that, Seventh-day Adventist. But once probation closes, he that is filthy, let him be filthy still. He that is righteous, let him be righteous still. It's too late. Well, your character takes a while. Yeah. And character is the only thing you take to heaven. The rest is all going to burn. Once probation closes, we will be protected by God and our bread and water will be sure. I have had people tell me, and I've had people that have been in my country living classes tell them, well, I don't have to do anything because my bread and water will be sure. God will take care of me. When you understand this chart, that God taking care of you and your bread and water will be sure is after probation closes. By then, you're not going to be able to be in the country. You're running for your life because they have a death decree with a deadline. So in conclusion, spiritual preparation for time of trouble. From the tragic story of the people of Noah's day, we should understand that what is happening in this world is very serious and life-altering. We need to pull away from the draw of worldliness with its pleasures of sin and the focus on energies on doing what God has asked us to do and tell others of the time of trouble that's surely coming. We need to be part of the solution and not the problem. Listen to the still small voice of the Spirit and be prepared to be faithful until the end. This is the only hope to being ready for the time of trouble and be able to see the hand of God deliver us from the ominous times to come.
To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.